Hey, it's Mr. A. Right back at you with another art video. Who knows what we're going to get into today? Learn how to draw that nose. Let's think about the nose, okay, as something that gets attached to the head. Now, if we draw it from the front, where our eyes are halfway down, our nose is approximately halfway between there. So I'm going to make a mark right about there, and then another one for the mouth about halfway between. If you're doing the 5 eyes wide technique, I measure so there's 5 spaces so that there's the length of one eye in between. Now what's difficult about learning how to draw the nose is that it's typically pretty, there's only a few hard lines and the rest is soft shadows. So the hard lines occur right here, which are kind of the flares on the nostril. The nostril itself is a hole, but we also have what's called the septum, or the part in between there. And the hole that is the nostril is basically underneath. Now on top, it's hard to draw the shapes that form the nose. We're used to seeing soft shadows and blending cleanly into some of the other shapes. Even the lines that we try to draw are actually just shadows that we're used to seeing so often, but we simplify them by drawing a line. If you look at the nose from the side, let's first construct the head. I'm going to put an oval, mark about halfway, then draw that same oval but on its side to approximate where the skull extends. This is where the neck or the spine attaches. You always got to remember that back area. But if you think about how your eye sockets work, your eyes are actually somewhat behind your nose. So a lot of times that will show up here. And our nose begins underneath our eyebrow. It comes in for the bridge of your nose. Mouth extends out slightly, gets cut off, and goes around. And sometimes with almost an invisible line here, we see that the top lip, the bottom lip, and the chin almost follow an invisible line between those two. Mine's not perfectly lined up, but you'll see that there's kind of a angle downward. We're more focused on the nose today, so this cusp, or the flare of the nostril and the nostril here, is really important to us. So we have 2 directions to define the nose, from the front and from the side. What we're worried about today is more about the 3/4 view. So what happens when this guy turns halfway in between those? Let's think about the nose as a shape. Let's assume that it attaches to the face here, and I'm going to draw a triangle. There's actually what we call a right angle triangle, or right triangle, meaning this angle right here is 90 degrees. Now, a 90-degree angle, not super important, but it's a good starting point. So I'll get this out of the way. And I'm actually going to be trimming this off with another line to give the illusion that there's a little bit more depth there. So with my eraser, I'm going to go back in, clean that up. Okay. Right now, this is just a triangle that we sliced up a little bit, but we're going to be using parallel lines to extend it into 3 dimensions. What I mean by parallel is any 2 lines that never intersect. But for example, the opposite of parallel would be something that crosses like this. This is an intersection. These never cross. No matter how far they go, they never intersect because they're at the same angle. Okay, and if they're at a different angle, they would intersect like this. So let's use some parallel lines to make this new shape into 3 dimensions. So I'm going to pick a line and pick an angle, and I'm going to just draw a line over here, maybe like that. That's going to be my visual guide for some of my angles. So getting the hang of it, I'm just kind of practicing drawing lines at that angle. And then I'm going to shift to about right here. And I'm going to try to draw a parallel line, nice and light. Same thing at each corner. Here, okay? It doesn't matter how long it is. Here it turns out that this is almost like the same angle, okay? It's not bad right now, but let's take a look at what's going on. I've done parallel lines. They look like they're lined up. What I want to keep an eye out for are things like that. Things that if I just continued them, they would intersect like this. So we don't want that. Even if it intersects in the future, we don't want it. So, what about this nose? This shape right here, okay, is going to get extended. So I'm going to focus on this line first, and I'm going to copy and paste it over here, okay? I'm going to think about, this is going to be the bridge of the nose. So see how I just basically drew it again right here? I'm not going to erase anything just yet. I'm going to just beef up this part of the parallel line that I'm going to steal. If you can guess, we're going to copy and paste this part and move it this way between these two spots. Watch. Parallel again. But it stops at the parallel line I drew here. Now what's tough is that this line right here is the same. What that means is that face is kind of rotated so much so that we can't even see it. I'm just going to shade a little bit in there just to maybe make it for the sake of this drawing. If you'd like to, you can erase a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna kind of leave some of it there. Some of those parallel lines that we messed with. Don't be afraid to use that eraser. Okay. Now notice how I left my parallel line down here. I'm going to now think about where the nostrils attach to the nose. Right now we have this section, which would be like the bridge of the nose. And the other part we're not really considering is this part that got cut off. It's kind of like the tip, but it's not. So this might be the tip of the nose as it angles down. And then down here is what we call the septum. I love how I'm using capital letters and lowercase, so I hope you guys don't mind. Septum under here is that surface. What are we going to do about the nostril down here? Okay, we're going to start by adding a box. Now I'm going to still use my parallel line that I drew, practice them, warm it up a little bit, and I'm going to start right about here by drawing a parallel line right here and here. Now with this other thing, we want it to actually turn the corner. So I'm actually going to draw like this. See how I'm getting this box? It's like almost like turning the corner. And then draw a straight line here. And a straight line here. What I'm creating is a foundation for this box that will represent my nostrils. Almost like wings coming off of here. So check this out. Another parallel line. Another parallel line here. And here. What I want you to think is if I were to extend this line right here a little bit farther, same thing with this one, we'd also be seeing part of the other nostril through the nose. We didn't really bother to draw this line, which just shows us the thickness of the nose over here. That would give us something like this here. So when it comes to seeing something from a new angle, you want to make sure that you know what's on the other side of an object, because we might actually see some of it. Now this is basically what a nose would look like if you had to build it in, I don't know, a computer from like the 80s or something like that. We also are just drawing the structure. So we're using simpler shapes, not simple, but simpler shapes to describe it, to help us figure out some of the basic shapes in here. I'm going to start doing some shading. This is what I was talking about before, to fill in areas, but the key thing is think about where the shadows are going to occur. Before I do that, I'm going to take a look at where my light source is going to be. I'm going to pretend, let's just say that there was a light shining right over here and it was hitting this nose. Not too far away. What's happening is the light is coming out of here and it's bouncing off of the nose, like at the top. Okay, think about here, bounce off. Okay, and this is going to be the lighter point, right? However, if it goes past here, it may end up with a shadow across the top of this thing because it's reflecting around this area. So we have to think about what things are going to be the brightest. So I already know that the top here is going to be the brightest. This section might be kind of darker, but anything underneath there, like for example, the septum is going to be really dark. So I'm going to undo those strokes and start shading, and you might see what I'm talking about. So we're using our light source, and I'm going to start to shade in this side because I know for a fact that that's not going to get much light. I'm just going to do one coat in there. Okay. I also know there's going to be some sort of shadow cast across here, so it's not going to get all the light. And I'm going to clean a little bit up with my eraser here, because I can't see this. I need to redo that. Alright, let's go back to shading. Alright. So here's the shadow. I'm going to make this a little bit darker. Okay, this is going to get a little bit of shadow here, but not a lot. And if that's as dark as I get, I'll make this one darker. Might get a little shadow here. Alright, and especially down here, I think it's going to be dark. That light's not going to turn the corner. Now that's all well and good if we are doing a flat, angular nose. Oh, I forgot about this corner. This is definitely going to be dark. Okay. Since we won't be seeing any of this stuff, let me just change this to our 6B so I can erase with the same pressure. All right. We're starting to see how that nose would look. The other thing is it's going to cast a shadow over here, okay? Basically the same shape. So wherever that hits, over here, that's going to be a shadow as well. So if we just fill that in, we get a really good sense about what this thing is attached to as well. Alright, now we have this setup, which is all good, except what we really haven't done is shaded an actual nose around it. So since I have extra layers, I'm going to try and almost create a different color so you guys can see. I'm going to draw in like brown. Okay, if I were to do this by myself and I knew what the structure looked like, how would I round this thing out? Well, I know that there's not going to be much shadow right here. So I'm actually going to kind of just give it some shape that's maybe a little bit rounder. Round out the edge here. Okay. On the nostrils, maybe I add some round shapes here. I could cut some corners if I want, but ultimately this, I'm kind of bending the rules here. And I'm gonna then also draw a loose line right here to fill in this gap. It's clearly not like the biggest thing here, okay? I have the nose, but I'm going to put shadows in similar situations. What I mean by that is I'm going to start blending here. Using that side. That is the most interesting angle there. Okay. But as I get over here, I'm going to let it slide a little bit. On this side of the nostril, I'll add some stuff because the light doesn't get over there, and underneath, and maybe just a little bit over here to show me where the other part of the nose is. And I'm going to just overlay just a little bit with a light shadow here just to soften this up so it doesn't look so hard-edged, but I'm leaving the center pretty light. As far as the shadow here, Just adding a little bit of brown. Okay, and then, oh, can't forget down here. That's going to be dark. Especially where it attaches to the face. Why don't we check it out? If I turn off the other layer, whoa, that actually surprised me. It's pretty good. What I want you guys to see is we did some hard work here. I'm going to add even another layer. Let's do some like neon green so you can see what happened. All right, so I put the shadows in the right spot, like this one right here. That is a shadow because it's on the opposite side. But can't you see that shape that we put back in there? So this is the bridge of the nose, okay? We cut off that shape. There's some shading that is definitely from that area there. And then even this, like you can kind of start to appreciate, this is the second part, but it looks like it caught all this light, and that shadow really follows and wraps around that nose. So what's missing here that we didn't really do is that, let's get this color back, but let's put it a little bit more on the face so we can see what else is going on underneath. So if this is really the bottom of the nose, remember that attaches, say, like to a mouth, right? And this is a pretty downward angle. So if you just think about what's going on down here, I'm just going to sketch something in. We won't spend too much time on it. Let's make it a little bigger because this is a big nose. Does look like a clown, I'm sorry. But this guy is surprised that he has a pretty soft looking nose. I don't blame him for being relieved.